So before I dive into my DCTLs, let me show you the project settings. First, we need to set up the correct color management for our specific video format. In Project Settings, go to DaVinci YRGB. Set the timeline color space to DaVinci Wide Gamut and the output color space to Rec. 709 Scene. Since I work on a Mac, I use these exact settings to ensure consistent results across all screens. Now for the node tree. The very first node should handle your footage parameters, meaning the input color space and gamma. Regardless of the camera you shot on, the principle remains the same. The input matches your file's parameters, and the output matches the timeline parameters. Since we set the project to DaVinci Wide Gamut, this will happen automatically. The last node in the chain will have an input of timeline and an output of Rec. 709, Gamma 2.4. However, if your monitor is calibrated to Gamma 2.2, go ahead and select that instead. This clip looks great, but let's check it first using the DCTL A-Zone checker. While my other DCTLs work correctly only within the DaVinci Wide Gamut space, this particular one is meant strictly for Rec. 709. Therefore, you need to place the node with this DCTL after your color space transform, CST out node. The first slider controls the UI layout on your screen. If you crop, zoom, or otherwise change the aspect ratio of your image, the graphic might cut off, so this helps reposition it. The tool works very simply. Skin tones are highlighted in yellow. If the skin looks purple, it's too red. If it looks green, it's too yellow. Skin tones will never be purely yellow, and it's completely normal to see a mix of all three tones, or at least two. The next parameter is exposure. You want to guide yourself by the brightness of the skin tone. On the chart, a properly exposed face corresponds to three colors: gray, yellow, and green. Of course, everything depends on your environment, whether it's day, night, shade, direct sunlight. Next is saturation. It follows the exact same principle as exposure. Skin tones should fall into gray or green, though in bright sunlight you will naturally see some yellow as well. The final parameter highlights neutral gray and green. If there are no people in your clip, this makes adjusting the white balance incredibly easy. Any neutral area in the frame will turn green. First, we're going to make things a bit more difficult. We'll duplicate this exact Sony S-Log3 file and change the parameters. Actually, I've already done that. To see the difference, I copied the KeyST nodes over to this clip, and now we can compare them. As you can see, the clip looks completely different. First up is the primary correction for this. I use the DCTL baseform engine. It allows you to make all the necessary adjustments, and you can easily use the bypass switch to toggle the changes on and off for a quick before and after comparison. To make things more visual, you can enable the graphic curve, but you should always monitor your changes using DaVinci's scopes. Personally, I prefer the parade scope. First, I'll try to make the adjustments relying only on the scopes. Let's start by bumping up the contrast. Let's check the pivot. Looks good, but first I'm going to bring down the exposure. Yeah, I like that better. Let's lift the blacks. Let's boost the highlights just a bit. And let's increase the saturation. All right, now we need to fix the balance. First, I'll try to do it using the vector scope, though the result might only be a rough estimate. That's why I'll use the A-zone check for a more precise result. As you can see, the skin tone on the color chart turns yellow. Now let's look at the exposure. I think that looks good. Now for the saturation. Looks like we could push it a bit more. Yeah, that works. And just to be safe, let's check the neutral gray. Now let's compare the original clip, which looked good, with this one, which initially had the wrong balance. As you can see, it looks much better. And now, let's compare the before and after of our corrections. Looking at the vector scope, you can see that the colors are pushing outside the rec point 709 gamut, so let's adjust that. Of course, this isn't a magic bullet that can do absolutely everything. If you use it for primary corrections, after which you can still use masks, tracking, you name it, it simply brings all the primary tools together in one place, though you could achieve the exact same results using Resolve's built-in tools. Once the primary correction is done, we can move on to the grading. For this purpose, I've developed a DCTL that, well, it's easier to just show you, but first, let's switch our scopes to the vector scope, where you can clearly see what's happening. As I mentioned earlier, these DCTLs are designed to work in DaVinci wide gamut. So, if your clip is in a different color gamut, you'll need to apply a CST input and output transformation. Then it has two main functions: shifting cool tones toward blue and warm tones toward red. As an alternative effect, you can also shift cool tones toward red and warm tones toward blue. This might come in handy for specific stylized projects. All the other functions are simply there to complement and fine-tune these main features, as you can tell by the names: hue, brightness, and saturation. The chroma dampener desaturates the cool tones, giving an effect similar to Lightroom's Black City preset. Finally, high and low temperature options give you extra control, working similarly to a split toning effect. Naturally, all these parameters come with a bypass switch. There's also a dedicated skin saturation option, which is useful when you need the skin tones to be less saturated. And then we have cold sat, which reduces blue saturation in the highlights, great for when the sky is a bit too intense. All right, now that I've demonstrated what the A-zone grade can do, let's try grading our clip. In this context, it's important to understand that the exact same settings won't work for every single shot. For this one, I'm going for an evening look, maybe something close to golden hour. Because of that, I'll be focusing more on the high and low temperature parameters. This is what it looks like before and after. You can easily push it much further, but my view is that everything needs to be balanced. Of course, if you have specific goals and requirements, like grading the next Matrix movie, then everything will be different. But for this type of near-documentary style, I think it looks great. I have a few more ideas in mind, and I've already started experimenting with some of them, but more on that later. If you have any ideas or suggestions, let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video, and you can find all the links right below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye.